What's up, everybody? Tyson Roush, Let's Talk Jets with a very special guest who I was a big fan of, actually. Former Jets running back, coach, and now analyst, LaMont Jordan. What's up, man?
What's going on? How you doing?
Bro, first of all, thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate this.
No problem, no problem. Looking forward to it. Big season for the Jets this year. So,
Let's
I
hope.
love talking Jets. It's good to be connected back with the New York fan base, and just looking forward to it.
First of all, as a young player, what was it like getting drafted by the Jets and coming to New York?
Man, when I got it's funny. When I first got to New York, I hated New York. I couldn't. I hated New York. I was like, yo, these people are rude. Everybody's got a guy. Everybody's this. Everybody's
Yep.
that. I realized quickly that using your blinker is a sign of weakness when you're driving. And I just, man, it was just, I was like, oh my gosh. I loved the plane experience. And my last year in New York, I actually got out of Long Island, went to the city, went
Yep.
to some restaurants, and all I could say is once I left New York, I missed it, and I truly know what they mean by taking a bite out of the Big Apple and loving New York. Man, love New York, miss it.
Yeah, man, you became a fan favorite quickly, man, with your running style, how powerful and explosive you were, which was awesome. And I'm sure you felt that from the fans. But so tell me about Jet fans, man. How were they to you?
Oh, I love Jet fans, man. I love Jet fans. It's crazy watching the preseason game last night. When it was raining, it took me back to it was either my third or fourth year where we played the Cincinnati Bengals during the preseason. Man, and it just rained. It just downpoured. And I just remember the fans just staying to the end of the game, the fans outside soaking wet, waiting for us to sign autographs. The Jets fans were just awesome, man. And when I went and once I left New York, I went to Oakland. We came back to New York the following year. Just welcomed me with open arms, man. And I know that New York, when it comes to football, everybody is Giants, 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 this, that, and the third. But if you go to a Giants game, if you have a choice of going to a Giants game or a Jets game, if you're looking to have a good time, you want to go to a Jets game.
Yeah, it's a rowdy bunch, man,
Oh
passionate
yeah.
bunch. And then the other really cool thing is you had a chance to play behind a Hall of Famer, Curtis Martin, man, which for a young player especially, that's got to be tremendous big as a role model guy to kind of learn from, right?
Yes, I mean Curtis is one of the best human beings I've ever met. He was a guy didn't look at me as a threat. I remember when I first met him and he was just like, "Hey, I'm not going to hold anything back. You got any questions, anything I can help you with, I'm here for you." And not just Curtis. I mean, I had Curtis Martin was about 5 lockers to my right, but I had Richie Anderson right beside me.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, man, as a rookie, as a guy who went from being a starter for, let's say, really 7 years, if you go 3 years in high school, 4 years in college,
Right.
to having to sit on the bench for 4 years behind Curtis, having Richie Anderson right next to me after practices, you were not going to have a bad day with that guy. He was hilarious. I was surrounded by great veterans, and it was just an awesome experience, man. I love New York. Love my experience with the Jets. Herm Edwards was just a great coach. Bishop Harris was my running back coach. Had an opportunity to work with Ted Cottrell, Jimmy Ray. Like, I mean, just so many, just Kevin Mawai as a center. I mean,
Yeah.
just my football experience. I always tell people, I always say, I'm not sure I would have made 9 years in the NFL if I didn't have Curtis Martin and Richie Anderson in the locker room with me for those four. Richie was there for my first three, Curtis for
Right.
all four. I'm not sure if I would have been a 9 year NFL vet. Like being behind Curtis and Richie and those vets, man, I learned a lot from those guys.
Yeah, no, that's something like, and the Curtis Martin, the one thing about him was his toughness and durability, man. So I'm sure for you, like, playing next to him, like, man, like his guy's always in the game, but he was so damn tough, man.
Yeah, he was. Curtis has like this, just spiritual, just an awesome man of God. And I just remember, you know, there were weeks where Curtis was injured. He's
Yep.
he's not practicing. Hey, Lamont, this is going to be your week. I get all excited. We come out there on Sunday. Curtis is healthy. He's taking all the reps. And so when I went to Oakland, I tore my MCL. I'm sorry. Yes, I tore my MCL my second year in Oakland, and I think we had, we weren't doing well, but all I kept saying to myself was Curtis would come back this year from this injury. So I tried to fight to get back, couldn't do it. But it's just whenever you bring up the name Curtis Martin, I have nothing but great and positive things to say.
No, he's a tremendous player, Hall of Famer, well deserved, which is
Yeah.
great. So now we transition over to this team. So it's a young, exciting Jets team. They had to overhaul the roster, which has been wild. But now you're in the preseason, and then Zach Wilson goes down. And I guess my first question for you is, he's missing a really important part of training camp, where he's missing not only preseason games, but he's missing the joint practices and practices. How tough do you think it's going to be him to get back and right into the regular season? Like, here you go, you got to play, live.
You know what? I don't think it's going to be that hard for him. I mean, before he went down, yes, he threw the interception. I think he overthrew. I think Garrett was in the flats wide open. He missed him. But outside of that, I think he was decisive. I think that he was throwing the ball in there. He looked calm. Prior to on the play that he hurt his knee, it's just like he looked fast. He looked like a guy that really put in some work during this offseason. And the reason that I'm not. It sucks that he had to get hurt, because I had the Jets starting the season 3-2. I thought the 5 games they would be 3-2. With the weapons that he has around him, the fact that he's coming into his second year, I was really looking forward to him starting. But we have to remember, he went through an injury last year and came back from it. And it's not like he's learning a new offense or anything like that. So that's just part of being a pro. Is yes, he is hurt. Yes, it does suck. But I'm sure he's doing all the things that he needs to do in order to get himself back. And I think that when he comes back, I think that he's going to be fine. There's a lot of weapons around him. There are a lot of weapons around him. And if he could just stay focused, not try to do too much, I think he'll be fine when he comes back.
And you talked about some of the weapons, and we'll go right to your specialty. Is they have 2 very dynamic running backs. And I guess we'll start with Michael Carter first, who's going into year 2, was a very promising year last year, minus some injuries. What do you think about Carter?
I like Carter. I'm really interested in seeing him. How I want to see his improvement. I want to see how much he's gotten better from last year to this year. There were certain runs where I feel like his legs got heavy. It's almost like, man, it's right there. And then it's like, oh, you got to burst through. But he's an exciting player to watch. I think that he's a tougher runner than people really understand and give him credit for. With that said, coming from year 1 to year 2, I think that he's going to make a big leap. And when you talk about that backfield, man, between Carter, Hall, Coleman, and Johnson, that right there, when you have an injured quarterback and you have an offensive line where maybe you have an injury or some guys that are new, your last line of defense is your backfield. And I know that Carter, that's the one thing that concerns me with him, is his pass protection. But that's why you have Hall, that's why you have Coleman, and that's why you have Johnson. I think that this backfield is wonderful. And I think that Carter I think he's going to have a big year. I really think that this backfield is going to be huge for the Jets this year.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Carter, but then you see Breece Hall comes in, who I was surprised they even drafted. I was caught off guard by that. But then you see him, and he's so explosive, he's so elusive, and he has I understand LT is like a Hall of Famer, but he has some Tomlinson in him where he cuts back and just goes, and it's just so cool to watch. I mean, what are your thoughts on him as a player?
He was my favorite back coming out the draft. And my co-host Andrew and I on the podcast, we talked about that. I had my top 2 running backs in the draft were Hall and Robinson. Robinson is currently with the Commanders. When I look at Hall, I think that he's just a perfect fit for the Jets. If you look at last year, you had Carter. Carter was just a little too small to be the guy that's going to carry the load and fight for those extra yards. Coleman was that guy, but he wasn't as fast. Right. Coleman is a threat out of the backfield, and he can pass protect. I really think that Hall is a combination of both Carter and Coleman. And I think that that's what's going to make this backfield dangerous, is that, hey, if you line up with 2 backs in the backfield and your backs in the backfield are Hall and Carter, okay? Yep. And then you have to deal with Elijah Moore, all right? Yep. Then you have to deal with Garrett, and you have to deal with Braxton Berrios, who I am a huge fan of, that I think was severely underused last year. And then you throw Corey Davis into the mix. That is a whole lot for any defense to handle. And so when you talk about us getting Hall, I mean, he is a mixture of Carter and Coleman, and I think that that's something that the Jets were missing last year.
Yeah, I mean, we always say you want playmakers, like elite level playmakers. Like you want guys like yards after the catch, get them in space and take off. So you had the running backs. You touched on the wide receivers. So to me, Elijah Moore is just so exciting to watch. You saw a glimpse. We were at practice last weekend. He's just so explosive, man. Like, get the ball in his hand. He's zigging, he's zagging, he's taking off What are your thoughts on him for year 2?
Oh, listen, I'm expecting big things out of him this year. I mean, I'm really expecting big things from the entire Jets offense. It's not like you're dealing with a situation where you're learning a new playbook.
Right.
Majority of these guys were in LaFleur's system last year, and so when you look at a Corey Davis and a Berrios, these are
Yep.
guys that are going to help bring more and going to help bring Garrett along.
Yep.
You look in the backfield, you have Carter and you have Hall, where you also have Coleman back there who's going to help bring these guys along.
Yep.
So when I look at this Jets offense, man, I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about the possibilities of what this Jets offense can be. Now, my excitement was with the thought process that Zach is going to be the quarterback.
Yeah.
All right. You have to take into account his legs. Now that he's out for maybe 3 to 4 games, possibly, now we have to rely on Flacco and White. So I think that first and foremost, the offensive line has to be stout.
Yep.
Once we get to week 1, no excuses. Herm used to always say, no excuses, no explanations. So when we get to week 1, if the offensive line is stout and the running backs are solid in their pass protections, I really think that this wide receiver core is going to give defenses a hard time, because you have to take this into account. You can drop your coverage to take away the wide receivers, but then you have to deal with tackling Hall and Carter in open space,
Yeah.
and that's just something that's going to present problems for the defense. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen with this Jets team this season.
Well, I think the one missing piece the Jets haven't had in forever was tight end position, and I think they significantly upgraded with Conklin, Azuma, and Ruckert. And for me, especially for a young quarterback like Wilson, that's your safety blanket, man. That's your valve, and that could open up a lot of things too. What do you think about the tight end group they have?
I saw Conklin get blown up on a run play where he was kind of off the ball. I forgot who the defensive end was. It kind of dragged him back, came off, and made the tackle. We can't have that from the tight end position.
Okay.
The tight end position at its core is a guy that can block in pass protection, that can block in the run, and can go out and run routes. And that's what we need from our tight end positions. We need to make sure that if they're standing in pass protection, that we can match you up on a defensive end, which will allow our running backs to get out the backfield. What you don't want to have is a situation where you have a tight end that's in on pass protection and backs who are dangerous out the backfield have to stay in a little bit longer than they should, because they have to help out with protection. So with our tight end position, I love the depth that we have at the tight end position, but now we have to see what these guys are going to do in a game time situation. If our tight ends can hold up in pass protection and they can hold up in the run, I think that this Jets offense is going to be dynamic enough that it can move the ball up and down the field. It can put up some points and put pressure and help out the defense a little more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Now, you mentioned the offensive line earlier, and the one question I have for you is, they got Dwayne Brown, later on in camp because they had to, because of the whole Mekhi Becton injury. But as of today, was August 23rd, they really haven't played together yet, man. 2 preseason games, they haven't played together. Hopefully next week against the Giants, the stars are going to play a little bit. How much is that a concern for you, as just to have like their line calls intact, the protections? Do you think, are you a little bit worried about that or no?
The reason I'm not is because the amount of years that Brown has played in the league.
Okay.
If this was a young guy, then yeah, I would have some concerns. But you're talking about a guy who played 12, 13 years in the league or something like that. He's going to come in at the end of the day, where it doesn't matter what position you play. Football is football. The biggest thing is knowing the terminology. That's the biggest thing. And so for him being a veteran, and yes, you want to have that continuity within the offensive line, but I'm not as concerned with a veteran who's been in the league for a long time. I think that he has plenty of time to come in, learn the system. They have enough practices. You have one more preseason game in a couple of weeks before you play the first game. I think that's plenty of time for the offensive line to gel together.
You're making me feel better, man. I'm relaxing a little bit now. I feel I'm calming down. So now you go to the defensive side of the ball, and obviously one of the big offseason acquisitions with the draft pick of Sauce Gardner, who as Jet fans we were spoiled with Revis, but now he comes in with the hype, the swag, and everybody's like, hey man, this could be Revis 2.0, and he got beat by Pitts in the one practice that went viral. How much pressure do you think is on him, and how do you think he's going to handle it?
I think there's a lot of pressure on him. I think from a mental standpoint, I think that he's going to handle it fine. But as Andrew and I have talked on our show a number of times, I have concerns. I don't think that a tall wide receiver who's a one-trick pony, who for the most part, only thing he's going to do is use his speed to run go routes, run posts, run your, every now and then your dig route and your slant route. I don't think that he's going to have a problem with those wide receivers. I think the fast running route runners are the people that I have concerns with. People have to remember in college, the cornerbacks, the DBs, they can get real handsy down the field with the wide receivers. In the National Football League, those are going to be flags. And so my concern for him, and which for me, is going to be the deciding factor on him, is how does he handle Stephon Diggs? How does he handle Tyreek Hill? How does he handle these fast guys who can get in and out of their breaks, who can catch the ball and go the distance? So I think that he's going to struggle early on. I know that he hasn't been challenged during the preseason, but I have seen some clips where a veteran quarterback, that wide receiver is open. But with that said, I think he fits in perfect with his attitude, with his confidence, with Coach Saleh's team. This is a very young team that is fiery. And if you look at throughout these, if you go back to last season, if it's one thing that I love about this team is that they are always competing. It doesn't matter what the score is, as long as there's time on that clock and there's plays out there to be made. The Jets have a head coach that has a team that has completely bought into what he's selling. And so I think that Sauce fits in perfect with them. I think he's going to struggle early on, but I think that he has the athleticism and I think that he has the confidence about him that he'll struggle early on, but I think that he'll be just fine. It's just my concern, like I said, are these fast route runners. That's what I'm waiting to see.
Yeah, and last year, going back on the defense, it was disappointing for the most part. We saw some of the worst defense we've seen in a while, just run defense and everything like that. So they go out and make a lot of upgrades. I mean, you get Carl Lawson back, which is enormous, but you go out and you get Jordan Whitehead, you get DJ Reed, Quan Alexander's a nice addition too. They got late. Do you think is it fair to expect a much improved defense this year? Or do you think they could still struggle a little bit?
I'm expecting a much improved defense. The area of the defense that I would love to see them be better at, and you hit on it, was the run defenses. I think that our middle linebackers taking on ISO last year were very soft. Now, I saw Williams in the preseason game last night. Atlanta tried to run an ISO. He came downhill and blew the fullback up. I think the running back made maybe 1.5 yards, 2 yards on the run. That's the biggest improvement that I would like to see from the Jets defense is when teams are running ISO or counter downhill at you. All right. I think that our linebackers need to do a better job of making sure they meet force with force instead of just waiting. I think last year they waited too much. If these linebackers can get downhill and clog that hole up more, I think that they'll do a better job of stopping the run. From a pass standpoint, I think if you look at the quarterbacks that we have to play this year, all right, first and foremost, week 1, you got Lamar Jackson. You have to deal with Allen twice. You have to deal with Tua twice. I think the way this team is built with the speed that we have off of the edges, I think that this thing is going to come down to our interior. It's going to come down to Thomas, and it's going to come down to Williams. Those guys being able to be stout on the inside, forcing running backs and quarterbacks to run sideways. Because if it's one thing that this Jets defense has shown is that they're fast. And if you watch these 2 preseason games, these guys get to the ball. And so I think the interior of our defense, our nose guard and our defensive tackle and our 2 inside backers, I think that they're going to be the key to stopping the run this year.
Yeah, man, that's interesting you said because I'm fascinated by Quinnen Williams, who the expectations were so high, man. Like you drafted that high, and the instant like Aaron Donald comparisons, all this, and everybody wants all these great things, but the numbers didn't match. But he's still been very good. I mean, and now he's getting to that quote where you're almost in the contract time where it's like, listen, man, like you want that big time deal. This could be the year. What do you expect out of Quinnen this year? Because now, like you mentioned, you have the outside guys now. You have all this. They can actually help push guys to you, if anything.
I'm expecting big things from him. From what I'm hearing, he's lost a lot of weight. He looks good. And so far during the preseason, he looks good. He looks like he's getting in the backfield and he's being disruptive. Now, one thing that I don't like that I'm seeing in the preseason is that these teams are moving the ball up and down the field in the first quarter. And so for me, that is concerning. And yes, maybe there are some guys that aren't playing, but that is concerning for me. I think part of it, especially for Jets fans, they have to understand that sometimes in preseason, a coach may be working on one particular thing. So the one thing that I'm seeing consistently is I'm constantly seeing them playing off coverage. And if you watch these preseason games, there are guys running wide open. The middle of the field is wide open. Those are things that I expect to change once we get into the season, once we start getting into game planning. I think that those are going to be things that are going to change. I think that this season for the Jets is going to come down to the efficiency of the offense. And on our show, we kind of did some bold predictions. Right. And one of my predictions is that Zach Thomas is going to throw 10 more touchdowns and interceptions this year, meaning however many interceptions he throws, he's going to have at least 10 more touchdowns. So in essence, what I'm saying is that I think that Zach is going to do a great job of taking care of the ball this year. I think that the Jets are going to be more consistent with moving the ball up and down the field. And I think that the Jets are going to be a team that can score enough points that's going to help the defense. And I really think that there's going to be some games this year where I think you're going to see some teams have to abandon their run game because the Jets offense was able to put up a lot of points. A team like Cleveland, a team that's run heavy. Yeah. I don't think that that's a team that can compete with the Jets if the Jets offensively are firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping, man. Like we all have high hopes for Zach Wilson. Like they built, like you mentioned, all the playmakers are having both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. My one question for you is like, you're playing against the AFC North, where that's physical football, man. That's like man up football. The Ravens week 1, like you can't come out, slow or kind of timid because they're going to come right after you, especially a veteran team with John Harbaugh led. Is that something you expect more of this Jets defense, especially where they're a lot more physical, a lot more aggressive? Because last year was kind of disappointing. The preseason has been kind of disappointing too. I'm like, man, I don't want to see more of this. I want to see the opposite with the guys flying around. But that's something you expect, a lot more physical defense this year?
Oh, yeah. I definitely expect the defense to be way more physical this year. When it comes to the AFC North, I have the Jets going 2-2.
Yeah.
I think the Jets beat Cleveland. And right now, and Andrew and I both said this, I think they beat Cleveland and I think they beat Pittsburgh. Teams who rely heavily on the run, I think the Jets have a good chance of beating them because I think the offense of the Jets is going to be that dynamic. And all of this comes down. I know we talk about Wilson, we talk about all these wonderful weapons that he has, but for me, especially with Zach Wilson being out right now, I think the success of the offense is going to come down to the OC. I think LaFleur is going to have to come up with great game plans to attack these defenses. People also have to remember this Jets team last year, if they were one of the youngest teams in the National Football League. So you take these guys that only had 1 or 2 years, you're giving them another year in the same system, same coaches, more weapons, higher expectations. If you're a Jets fan, you have every reason to be excited about what's happening with the Jets. And hey, let's just say this year doesn't go well. Let's just say for some reason this year doesn't go well. The one message that I want to get to Jets fans is that this franchise is headed in the right direction. And I think that everybody should hop on board. Let's not get too excited. Let's not go out there and hey, the Jets are going to win the Super Bowl. And you want to think that about your team.
Right.
But the thing that I want to make sure that everybody understands is that this franchise is headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to plenty of callers throughout the week, stuff like that. And I think most Jet fans are saying, 6, 7, 8 wins, but our whole hope is that we're playing meaningful games in December. Like you want to just be in the mix, in the hunt, like you get a lucky break here and there or something good could happen. But it's like I think everybody's kind of realistic. We understand that it's a team on the rise and it's like we all believe in solid. We love what Joe Douglas did, but we just don't want to see, 45-3 losses and things like, you just kind of want that glimmer of hope to actually come out on the field now where you say, okay, we're making progress. Year 2 of Saleh's program, we get it. Year 3, compete for playoffs. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. And I think that that's the type of year it's going to be. I think the Jets will win a minimum of 7 games this year. And notice I said I think they'll win a minimum of 7 because I am leaving hope that they can win more games. I just feel like there's something really eerie is going to happen this year with the National Football League. And the thing that makes me say that is if you look around at a lot of teams have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
The Browns have questions. Pittsburgh is dealing with a rookie quarterback. Miami, I think karma's going to find them. Buffalo, if they don't utilize their run game, they're not going to the Super Bowl. There's so many questions on both the NFC and the AFC side that anything can happen this year. And that's why I'm really excited about this year. Like if you're a Jets fan, like You should be excited about this year. I feel I don't. Of course, it can happen, but I'm not anticipating a game where we get beat 43-3 or it's just
Yeah.
some blowout. I'm just not seeing that happen this year. I think that this team is going to be a lot better. The one thing that is critical from year one to year two is they have to do a better job of playing for 4 quarters. I think that
Yeah.
this team played for one half, which put them in the situations that they were in this past year. If they could get off to a good start, and right now it's not looking good in the preseason for the first, for the first quarter or the first half. But if these guys can get off to a good start, take care of the football. That's the biggest thing. Take care of the football. I think the Jets will be just fine.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I was flipping out last night. I'm like, man, I'm so tired of seeing the defense start off so slow. And it's like, and we saw it last year. Like the first quarter, you're down 7-0, 10-0. Right before half, it's going down. And then it's like all of a sudden here they come back roaring back. It's like, is that a coaching thing? Is that a player thing? Like what does that where does that come from? Like the slow starts?
For them right now, I'm going to say it's a culture thing. Coaches coming in and changing a culture.
Yep.
And I think that that's what people have to understand is that he has a group of young guys and he's trying to change a culture. And so with the slow starts, it's going to happen when you have a young football team. First off, you have a first year head coach, and this was everybody's first year together.
Yeah.
Especially during a time where COVID is still having an effect on everything that everybody's doing. That's why with this being the second season, I feel good about the possibilities of what the Jets can do this year.
No, I'm excited. Now, the last question I have for you, it's really interesting is, I think it was like 17 out of 22 starters didn't play last night because they had the joint practices. And Silas said it's a short week because you're playing on Sunday versus the Giants. How important is this last preseason game? Would you be concerned if the starters don't play much at all on Sunday too?
I want to see the starters. I want to see Flacco. I need to see Flacco play because I don't know when's the last time he's been good.
Yeah.
And so he's not a quarterback to me that we can come in and say, hey, you've earned the right to sit down and not play preseason. I think we need to see Flacco out there. I think we need to see the starters out there for even if it's just a quarter. You want to get your guys out there. Right now, you can't worry about injuries. You can't worry about that. You have to get your team prepared to play a game of football. So having the joint practices and then sitting the starters out, I totally understand that for this last preseason, for the preseason game that just passed. But for this preseason game that's coming up, we have to see the starters out there. We have to give the Jets fans an opportunity to see what's going to be out there, who's going to be out there competing. And so I'm really interested in seeing what they do.
Yeah, I was hopeful to see that too, where it's like at least get the offensive line out there for a quarter. Like you don't have to play 3 quarters like it used to be, but get them out there, man. Just see what's going on. Like you said, you can't really. You're scared about injuries, but like this is football, man. You got to get out there and just get out there because after that, you're live. You're 2 weeks away from the Ravens in front of a crazy crowd. So now, do you go to games and stuff, man, or what do you do? Do you?
No, I haven't been to games. I haven't been up there. I plan
Come
on
on, man.
Yeah, I plan on getting up there this year. Listen, man, COVID just I was coaching with the DC Divas. It's a women's tackle football team here in the DMV. Prior to that, I was a high school coach. I coached a little bit in the XFL. I coached in the AAF. So I've been doing a lot of coaching, especially during football season. So it's been really hard for me to travel and get up to the games. But this year, I'm not coaching during the season. And so I'm looking forward to following my Maryland Terps. As everybody can see, go Terps. Mike Loxley is the head coach up there, expecting big things from the Terps this year. And just looking forward to following really all of the teams that I played for. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how this young Jets team does.
Yeah, and you mentioned your podcast a couple of times too, man. You're an awesome interview, man. You're very well spoken, but like the X's and O's, and you can give us like the insight from a player perspective, which a lot of analysts can't give, man. Which I love the most, man. That's like the mind of a player is different than a guy that's never played before. So give out some information on your podcast, man.
Oh yeah, so it's Believe in Jets. That's BLEAV in Jets. Myself and Andrew Golden, we're the hosts, and our podcast. We're talking about sports. We're talking about X's and O's. We're going to break down the upcoming game. We're going to talk about the game that was just played, and every week we do a bet, we do a pick, what we think are the best picks. And that's pretty much what it is. So if you want to get some in-depth information where you want to talk X's and O's, we're not talking drama. We're not talking soap opera stuff. We're talking straight up football. And so that's what we do on our podcast. So week to week, Believe in Jets. It's on the Believe Network. And come check us out, man. I think that you'll really like some of the information that we're giving, and hey, I look forward to coming back on your show.
Absolutely. And also you're on Twitter and Instagram. It's at
Yes.
Coach Jordan 34 on Twitter. I think you said it's LaMont Jordan _34 on Instagram. So
Yes.
but dude, you're a must follow, man. You're dropping all kinds of insight here.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to sending out more content this upcoming season. For anybody who listens that aren't just Jets fans, I'm here in the nation's capital. I follow the Washington Commanders, of course. I follow the Raiders. I mean, I follow the National Football League. I'm all sports right now. I'm into baseball. I'm an athlete, man, and so I'm looking forward to this upcoming season, not just for the Jets, but for the podcast, and just enjoying football season, man. I mean, it's so good to be back.
It is. I can't wait, man. It's like, Jet fans are week ones can be chaos. So we're looking forward to. Well, LaMont, first of all, thank you very much for your time. I genuinely appreciate it. And if you can come on again, during the season, before game or after game, we'll talk some more. And thank you, man. I had a great time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Have a good night.
All right, you too.